$H Fresh at the Flyboy Way. That's THEFLYBOYWAY. Don't ask why, just check out the channel. And we are leaving work today on this Friday where most people were asleep because everybody had off yesterday during Thanksgiving in the United States. And welcome to Jeep Talk, episode 66. Who is responsible for the success or failure of your child as an adult? I know that's a tough question. I'm going to say from the start that there is a percentage that of who's responsible or responsibility on both the parents who raised them or didn't raise them, the parents who were in the child's life and weren't in the child's life, as well as the child themselves when it comes to who's responsible for the child's success or failure. I'll give it, let's say, 30%. Nah, let me do it. 25% of a child's success or failure as an adult is because of the parents. Is because of the parents. So I was watching watching TV. I was watching the Brian McKnight interview he had the other day. I've heard the case. I never want to judge anybody until I hear the whole story. And I honestly, I was like, wow, getting to hear all sides of the situation. You could talk about who was right, or what was good, what was bad. But the greater thought process was who's responsible for the child's failure or success when they get older. Older meaning over 18 years old, when they become an adult. I think that a lot of the 25% that is part of the parent, that's partial the parent's fault, of that, all of it comes between the ages of 5 and 18. And the reason why I say between 5 and 18, what your parents do will determine your success, is because those are the ages where you're not really able to take full accountability for your actions. Because by law and by government status in the United States, at least, up to 18, unless you somehow get a separation from your family, your mother or father, on whatever one it is going to be the most responsible for your actions. A lot of people think that you need to have a mother and father in the same household for a child to be successful. And what ends up happening when they move that way, is if the mother and father don't have a bond where they're able, a friendship, able to communicate and not be argumentative, and they have the same basis where one or the other does, whether it's the man or the woman, one or the other is the lead person who can show the child what to do, then the child is getting confused as they're being raised up. The child is going to get confused. And the reason why the child is going to get confused is because his mother says one thing, his father says another thing, they're both in the same house, or they're separated saying two different things, and the child can get confused. So there has to be some dominance. And I know the standard is that the male is the dominant, but the woman could be dominant also, but there has to be some dominant position where a child can follow and say, okay, that's what dad says, and I know this is what mom says, or that's what mom says, and that's what dad says. I think that plays a big part. What's going on, Just Vaughn? That plays a big part in who the child becomes when they're older. Whether they're mentally stable enough to be able to function in the world, or whether you've taught them accountability, or you just behaviorally train them to be disciplined. Now, discipline does play a big part, but accountability is a higher understanding of discipline to me. In other words, I can tell my kid, don't touch that stove. And whenever my kid goes to touch the stove, I smack his hand or smack his hand. But if one time he goes to touch the stove and he say he doesn't do any damage, but he touches it and it's hot and he hurts his hand, I mean healable of course, he will never touch that stove again. Because he knows that if I do it again, I'll be accountable for understanding the pain that comes with it. For a lot of people know, if you have daughters or if you know a person with a daughter, a lot of parents that restrict their daughter so strongly from dating, restrict their daughter from going out with her friends, restrict their daughter from going to parties, as when they're in their preteens or their teens or they're in high school and they're in late teens. When you restrict your daughter from that, what happens? I'd say 90% of the time when she finally gets out, she becomes a thought. And the reason she becomes a thought is because you wasn't able to show her the consequences and repercussions. Instead, you just kept saying, no, don't do it. And anytime she tried, you'd stop her. So then she goes out in the world, she has her quote unquote whole phase. And all of a sudden now she's pregnant at 16, 17, 20, 21. And now she can't go to her career because you've locked her down so much. I think the responsibility of a parent is to guide their child to figuring out what the child wants, not what the parent wants. And I think that's one thing that the millennial generation of parents are the first generation. Millennial meaning you was born after 1980. Millennial parents are the first set of parents that are taking this route where we're allowing the child to be who they're going to be, but we're setting guide rails so they don't overly hurt themselves. All other generations, they only reciprocated what they were taught from their parents exactly. The boomer generation, the generation above the millennials, they only reciprocated what worked for their family, or what they believe worked for their family when they were older. Go out and find somebody to marry. Go out and get a house with a white picket fence. Go to school, get a college degree. After a college degree, you'll find a job. And now that situation doesn't work in any aspect. 53% of marriages end in divorce. Most college graduates end in college debt that they're not able to pay. The situations that their parents and the people, unfortunately enough, I was somewhat of a rebel, so I was able to take my own path of the way I wanted to grow, and I end up being, not saying that this is the standard of what would happen, end up getting to millionaire status, ended up being able to travel the world, have had some amazing times with some of the most amazing women you'll ever see. I've been able to experience things like owning property, driving cars, taking like a lot of stuff. But not everybody is going to be a rebel. And the more you take your feelings of what a child should be and put them on them, I think the more responsible you are for who they become as an adult. Get to your comments. I see a couple comments. Johnny says, train the child the way they should go and they'll never depart. I don't really agree. This is what I'm saying. I don't agree about that. I feel as though no parent knows which way a child should go. There is no way that a parent can know what way is a child should go. That's why I say you set guardrails. Me personally, another Jeep. I would set guardrails to make sure they don't fall all the way off in whatever they do. But I'm not guiding them to the left. I'm not guiding them to the right. I'm just standing by their side so they don't fall off the cliff. You want to go to the right, you go to the right. You want to go to the left, you go to the left. Because I feel as though what Johnny 886 says, a lot of the older generations did, and it's causing mental breakdowns between people who are, kids who are now adults, or kids who are now adults. It's because it's causing people to stress out about these college debts because they was beat into their head. That's the way they should go. it's causing people to be stressed out about divorce and marriages because that's what their parents told them, trained them on how to go, and they didn't allow them to be who they was going to be, and just set guardrails so they don't fall off the way they're going. I'm not going to try to talk too much about a specific situation because I never do. But like I said, I was kind of influenced by the Brian McKnight situation. Also, some stuff with my own self. For example, my child is very intelligent. Both of my kids, my son and my daughter are very intelligent. My daughter's graduated on time. She knows what she's doing. She's doing at 18, and she just started cosmetology school. She took a trade that she could be interested in, something that's not going to cost relatively too much. I think the school is about $8,000, and then they put her in a position. They put her in a internship, which is super dope, about $8K. My son, bright, gets great grades, but he is also more of a rebel. And rather than fight back on his rebelness, I just try to guide him into understanding accountability. If for example, if my son, when we play video games, and even as an adult, I don't really curse much. I guess that is something I don't really curse. But when I'm on video games, sometimes I get a little aggressive, and my son does too. But I whenever he gets in trouble for being, aggressive like that, if he ever got in trouble for being aggressive like that, it's never a profanity thing. It's never anything like that, because I showed him, listen, you're being held accountable if you're doing it. And by him over time learning that, he doesn't speak the same way he does on video games as he does in school. I feel like if you never, and then again, I always believe that ability. I'll get you a comment, Johnny. I believe that if you never teach your child, not train, but if you don't teach your child accountability, then no matter how much you train them, no matter how much you tell them to go down this road, if anything happens in life, they're not going to be accountable for it. They're going to just be all over the place. So, for me, that's the way that I feel like I was going to teach. That's the way that I feel as though I would teach my the way I teach my children. You know what I mean? Again, I got one successful one so far, out of school, know what she's doing. Most kids don't even go. Most kids nowadays, the reason why they get out of school and they don't know what they're doing now is because they've been guided down the lane by their parents, or they've been trained down the lane by their parents who are trying to apply what they learned from their parents in this environment where things don't work that well. Which is again why I say 25% of the reason that that the child who becomes an adult is in a predicament they're in is from the parent. The other 75% is like another 75% is between life experiences of their and how they reacted to it, as well as just who they are and their personality. That also plays a major part in who the child becomes as an adult. Now, if I'm not around my child, I am still responsible 25% of who they become, because simply me not being around somebody, whether it's I'm out in the military doing something and I'm not spending time every day or every couple days, at least every week with my child doesn't see me every weekend, or if I'm how do I say it? If I am like a artist or something and I'm always on the road, or if I'm just a lazy parent who doesn't like to be involved with my kids' life, whether it's taking them to basketball playing, whether it's watching their games, Whether it's, always showing up so they can see that I'm there, even though they might not need me there. Then again, I'm 25% responsible if my child succeeds or if they're a failure. I don't think a lot of parents think like this anymore. I feel as though parents are trying to. A lot of parents believe that. And I'm gonna get to your comment again. I'm thinking a lot of parents believe that there's a guidebook and a manual or a way that you can raise a child to adapt to any situation that happens in the future. And that same guidebook never has to be changed. It never has to be reevaluated to see if it works in this environment. Now we got more people. This is the reason I feel as though we have more people who are more worried about the Epstein files than their own finances. This is the reason why we have more people worried about what's going on in other countries rather than what's going on in their own life. Because we've been trained to follow the same path that our parents and grandparents were on that led them to wherever they led to. But us millennials, I feel as though